Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on data sharing and monetization in Snowflake. My name is Michael Kapr. I'm the CTO and founder of Billigence. We are an international consultancy specializing in cloud data analytics and insights, and I'll be your today's host for the session. Today, we have a lot to cover, and I'm very excited to be here to share with you our thoughts on this exciting topic. As we all know, the data environments are increasingly complex, and it's really difficult to make data accessible to different users across departments, different business units, and increasingly externally to interested third parties. How can we provide direct access to data without moving it? How can we eliminate data silos to enable deeper data discovery, and how we can reveal new business insights? That's what we want to cover today. And the topics will be how Snowflake can benefit your organization. We'll cover the concepts of data sharing and data monetization. We'll touch on a couple of client use cases, and there will be time for Q&A session at the end. So please, if you have any questions, add it to the chat and we'll get back to it at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first guest, Geoff Soon, the Managing Director, South Asia at Snowflake.
Thanks a lot for this amazing opportunity to share with you and your customers, Michael, some of the exciting things that Snowflake is doing from a data sharing perspective. For those of you that aren't familiar with Snowflake, we just celebrated our 9th anniversary as a company, but really we've only been around we spent the first 3 years of our life actually building our technology. So we've only been in the market as a product for the last 6 years. And during those last 6 years, Snowflake has really gone through a transition between, and this has been very much a customer-driven transition, where we started off our life as a cloud data warehouse. And we're very, very popular. Customers were leveraging our platform. After that, we noticed a strong demand. After being a cloud data warehouse for a couple of years, we saw customers applying more and more workloads onto our platform. And very much we grew from being a cloud data warehouse to being a cloud platform, where organizations were using us for use cases such as a data lake. Organizations were using us to do data engineering on the platform. There were other organizations that were running advanced machine learning models and algorithms against the data in Snowflake, so using us as a repository for AI and ML. And finally, we had organizations starting to share data. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today, because it's something that we've seen that has changed quite significantly across the last 2 years. And I think a large part of this is actually driven by the fact that global supply chains have never been more impacted due to the COVID pandemic. Routes to market have never been under so much fluctuation, and almost every organization has had to digitize extremely rapidly. So now, when I look across our customer database, our customers, we see over 1/4 of them actively sharing data with third parties on a monthly basis. And I kind of think this will really lead, or this has led, to customers that have embraced this with additional richness of their data to make more informed decisions to help them in their transformations. So the one thing I really want to share about Snowflake is we really have transitioned from being a data warehouse company to being a data cloud company. And the big difference is this data cloud, which is effectively a data fabric that are joining our ecosystem of customers and data providers, is something that is very real and happening today. We have approximately 5,000 customers today, and each one of those customers is represented by one of these dots on this graph diagram that looks in some ways like the Death Star. But you can actually see here that we have some examples across all different types of industries where wherever you see a connection between these dots It's an example of a real-life data exchange. So we had an organization called Star Schema that normalized all the different sources of COVID data from the WHO, from the various national and government agencies, and they've made it all available. And we've had literally hundreds of our customers take advantage of those data sets. We have organizations such as BlackRock, which is one of the largest fund managers in the world, utilizing the Snowflake platform to share ESG data with many of its fund management customers. And we see more and more examples of this happening all across our customer base. What I wanted to do, though, was really just double click into kind of what we're seeing in FSI. And to be upfront, we're seeing similar patterns across telco. We're seeing similar patterns across manufacturing and connected industries. But I just wanted to pick one example to show how the data cloud really looks like in person or in reality. So each one of these orange dots is a Snowflake FSI customer. And really all these customers are taking advantage of the ability to share data in a completely secure and governed and novel way with other organizations across our ecosystem. And more, we have industry data sets that are incredibly popular, such as FactSet, S&P Global, Rhymes, etc. I think Refinitiv is looking to onboard very, very soon. These organizations are utilizing the Snowflake platform to share data with their existing customers, both existing Snowflake customers, as well as customers that aren't on our platform yet. So looking at beyond that, I really wanted to talk through, I guess, a concept of first, second, and third party data that we have at Snowflake and how the data cloud can really help enhance data sharing in these situations. So when we talk about first party data, it's all the data that you have within your organization. And today it's often kept in silos or trapped in bunkers. So this could be data in any of the SaaS services that you may use, such as a CRM system like Salesforce. It could be a web monitoring technology like Google Analytics, or actually monitoring via the Datadog. It could be information in your ERP systems and any bespoke applications that you've created. Snowflake helps bring all this data together and make it really accessible through our private data marketplace. But as I mentioned, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations that realize that if they are to be successful, they're going to need to share data with other organizations. So in the context of insurance, you may need to share data with some sort of credit card or payment provider just to ensure that you can validate that premiums have been received. If you're actually looking to insure in specific domains, you may be needing to work with an Equifax or an Experian to actually get some credit history on a person that you're potentially looking, or a situation that you're looking to insure. And finally, insurers are also not only about managing risk, they're about optimizing their premiums. And often, we see insurance organizations working hand in hand with asset managers, really just to provide that ability to create new investment products and the ability to invest their premiums to ensure that their policyholders are taken care of. So once again, a need to exchange data on a very frequent basis there. And then finally, when you look about third-party data are these data sets that are available that may cover things such as socioeconomic data. They may cover marketing trends. If you're looking to, for example, insure in the real estate segment, you may be dealing with a property.com or Zillow to get valuation of the actual property from a third party. So one of the things that the Snowflake Data Cloud enables is really seamless data movement and querying across first, second, and third party types of data. And as I mentioned, Snowflake started off as a data warehouse. Data sharing is one of our use cases, but really more and more customers are starting to use this very holistically across these 6 different workloads, which span from data engineering, where people are actually doing transformations to normalize the data and to make it more accessible within our platform. They're using this as a data lake, a repository, a single source of truth for many, many different source systems, so that it's very easy to collate that and make it available to any advanced AI or ML, or analytics tools. Data science has been incredibly popular recently, where more and more organizations are building connectors in Snowflake so that they can not only leverage the data within our platform, but that on-demand compute that Snowflake offers to make it really, really easy to perform at scale model training as well as serving. And finally, data applications is where organizations are leveraging our platform to actually build new offerings that they can take to market. Now, Snowflake does data sharing in a completely unique way that really takes a lot of complexity, risk, and governance out, governance challenges out of the picture. So if you look at it traditionally, the way that data is shared, in best case, it's kept in secure buckets. There's some sort of APIs, but more often than not, people are sending, they're extracting the data, they're having to encrypt it, they're having to then transmit it using some sort of FTP. And on the other side, you've got the whole reverse process of decrypting the data, uploading it back into some sort of system of analysis, having to do error checking, etc. So in general, we're moving data, it's risky. The minute you've moved it, the data isn't fresh anymore. It is error prone and very, very complex. And what I've described as the best case scenarios, the worst case scenarios of data sharing is, exporting to an Excel sheet and sending it via email. So Snowflake is really trying to help organizations move away from these traditional manners into something that is completely secure, but also has a global reach. So the important thing to realize about Snowflake is we have dozens of instances around the world where we can give the customers the ability to say, hey, I want my data never to to exit a specific region due to data sovereignty, or they can identify certain data sets that can be moved around the globe. So this is using our SnowGrid technology, which allows you to mirror data wherever you need it to be around the world. Now I'm actually going to go into a bit of detail on why Snowflake data sharing is so unique. With Snowflake data sharing, number one, the data never moves. Number two, the data is always fresh and real, and at any time using role-based access control policies, you can grant and remove access to that. So you may be asking me, Geoff, why is Snowflake so unique that you're the only solution in the market that allows data sharing in this way? And it all comes down to our architecture, where Snowflake, if you think about it, is one giant multi-tenanted data cloud where tenants are residing within, each of our customers are residing in a separate tenant within this data cloud. What this means is when it comes to actually sharing data, all we're effectively doing is opening up database permissions between one tenant and another tenant to allow for this data to be accessed and shared in a very, very controlled manner. We're not having to move data around the world. We're simply using role-based access permissions to create portals from one tenant to another. So we have really, I think, three ways that customers are utilizing our data sharing capability. The first one is very much to optimize data sharing within their organization. So first-party data. And this is where customers are setting up private data exchanges where different business units are publishing data sets in very governed way and making them accessible to other lines of business. So I think, that's the number one use case that we see. The second thing is, as I mentioned, that sharing of data with second party and third party organizations. And we have some very unique ways of doing this. As discussed, the first case is a direct share. We're using role-based access controls. We simply create that window between one tenant and another. And you can be very specific and granular about what types of data you share, for how long, and to who you're sharing that data to. If the other organization isn't a Snowflake user, it's also very easy to provision, literally with a couple of clicks, a reader account that you can actually provide that party. And using this reader account the party that you've provided access to can start to do things such as querying, dashboarding, etc., using your reader account. And I think the final thing that's starting to get very, very exciting is third-party data exchanges, where organizations, and I think I mentioned a couple from the financial services industry, organizations such as S&P Global and Refinitiv, but in dozens of domains, organizations are publishing data through a third-party data exchange on Snowflake so that anyone can subscribe to this data. So things such as weather data, real estate data, socioeconomic data, funding data through Crunchbase, which is one of our providers. So this creates a really, really rich environment where organizations can perform analytics, not just within, I guess, the four walls of their own organization, but actually start to leverage extended data sets to come up with more interesting insights. As mentioned, we do have this Snowflake data marketplace, and these numbers change almost on a monthly basis. So these slides are slightly old in terms of 175 providers and 18 categories. We have over 200 data providers today. Importantly, this is not these organizations who have simply extracted some data from their databases and put it on our marketplace. Each of these data sets range from being real time to potentially, a couple of days old. And it actually lists how fresh or contemporary the data set is in the actual listing. And what will surprise all of you, and I think Michael's going to talk a little bit about it, is just how quick and seamless it is to access these databases. So this is the one thing that I would probably ask everyone on this audience to try. Go register for a free Snowflake account, load some of your data into Snowflake, and then see how easy it is to leverage these third-party data sets. Just to go into a little bit more detail, we have the three modes of sharing. The direct share that I spoke about, all based on role-based access controls, very, very easy to extract things such as materialized views and provide access only to the materialized view that you've defined. And once again, full audit trail of who's accessing the data, how they're accessing the data, and in fact, what queries they're running against the data. So a very, very governed way to share data with a trusted second party. As mentioned before, almost 90% of the functionality of a direct share account can be achieved through a reader account. And it's really interesting that you can even connect a Tableau or a data robot to these reader accounts to start to do analysis on this data that's been shared. And finally, this ability to create both private and public data exchanges really drives forward this concept of enabling the democratization of data, and also the ability to start to monetize the data sets that an organization may have. And once again, I think we're having over 200 data providers at this point in time. This is just a small sample of it. But what I would love to do now is hand things over to Michael, who's actually going to talk through a few real-world examples of how customers are using Snowflake's data sharing capabilities today. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Geoff, and thank you very much for the introduction and really great overview of the incredible journey Snowflake had in the last couple of years, from, as you said, starting as a data warehousing, very, very scalable data warehousing platform, but now really covering end-to-end scenarios in the data cloud space. Let me share my screen. I would like, in the rest of the session, to really focus on what it means for the organization. So if you look at a standard large organization, and their analytics environment, you typically see three different patterns. One, your traditional one, when you do business intelligence and reporting, is fairly static, typically managed by IT, who provide data pipelines, and they provide standard reports, which are used by hundreds of users. So that's one typical pattern. We're all familiar with it. On the increase, of course, we have the area of self-service analytics. We are partner with Snowflake and Tableau, and we do a lot of design of consumption layers specifically for the analyst in the self-service space. And it's really ad hoc querying, which puts a strain on your existing data warehouse, but it's still based on the same data sets. And finally, we also have our data scientists. They love going down to the raw data, all the way down to their storage, and they always deploy Python and machine learning and different methods. And sometimes it's actually incredibly sad to see some of those features created by data scientists are not available to the other two streams. So in effect, we see a lot of silos, despite the fact that all three patterns really use the same data. And I think it's great to see, and that's where Snowflake comes in place, that in Snowflake, you can really manage all three different workloads with different users in the same place. And how do we go about that? So if you look at 5 years ago, we solved the problem of on-premise data warehouses when we were running out of space, and obviously we had challenges with concurrent processes. So what Snowflake's achieved, it essentially created a place when you can have data lake with data mart and the data warehouse in one place. You have the ability to have your traditional batch pipelines, do ELT, ETL, you can stream data, but you can process more than just structured data. You obviously can do semi-structured, and particularly JSON or nested structures, you can just put them simply to one column in Snowflake without spending effort flattening those structures and being able to run really efficient SQL over it straight away. And I think we know how much we struggle with getting performance out of complex queries or something like Hadoop with Hive. So with Snowflake, you really are able to cover all the scenarios as they crystallizing in a modern data-driven organization, and obviously facilitates really well the move to the cloud from on-premise data warehousing solutions. So if I were to recap, why Snowflake? First of all, it's a software as a service, and it minimizes the effort required to maintain a data warehouse. So in terms of, you can really focus on data modeling and ingesting data in, and then you don't have to worry about optimization because there's so many good features built into Snowflake, which really you don't have to worry about it. So, you can forget all the petitioning and really complex indexing you have to do on a traditional warehouse to get the performance out of your warehouse. Secondly, there's obviously competitors, but Snowflake is not simply taking a database from on-premise solution and putting it in the cloud. What Snowflake did really well, it leveraged the cloud to separate storage from compute and build a really flexible platform which allows you to adjust to any scenarios. And typically, we would have very quickly 10 to 15 different virtual warehouses, whether it's for data loading, for data scientists, from ad hoc querying and so forth, all created with different sizes, and we can scale up and down as we need to. So it's really transformation, the way how you think about working data. You go back to good data modeling and providing really good consumption layer for the users. And finally, I already talked about it, the SQL engine within Snowflake is incredible. And as I said, you can start with extra small, which is just one call, and within second you can be using triple extra large, which is 64 calls to really do certain tasks faster. But you have the decision. Do you want to do it quickly in 5 seconds? Are you okay for certain process to take 5 minutes or 5 hours? So it's really flexible the way how you structure your workloads. And finally, I think Snowflake allows us to think about data sharing as an extension of your platform. It's not building a separate data exchanges. I think you all heard about Data Republic and other providers who tried to build a system, but it was based on outdated technology, and it was actually really bespoke and difficult to maintain. So the fact that you can simply extend, as Geoff mentioned, your queries or materialized views directly to a consumer in 1 or 2 steps is just incredible. So how can we unlock the value of data sharing? Because of course, in your ecosystem, I think there's incredible value locked in within the organization, but also externally. I mean, how many times have you been in a situation where you have sales and marketing department working on the same data set, create some really nice segmentation for the other department, not knowing that it exists, or receiving those Excels and via email to be able to share that information. So I think there's incredible value internally for reusing the interesting data assets which are created but not shared, but also preparing your data, which I'm sure every organization can imagine 1 or 2 use cases where external parties would be so interested in getting access to it, and they'd be willing to pay for access to your data. So what happens today? Typically, you have to design extract process. You send files somewhere, and there's SFTP involved. And on the other side, somebody has to understand the structure, has to unpack it, and you have to load it and so forth. So 6, 7 easy steps. And of course, it's difficult to make it secure and so forth. So what that means that you're spending significant effort and cost involved in exchanging data, and therefore, it's not as well utilized. And I think the potential is there, but it's just too difficult to do, and it's a huge investment to do something really well designed. So to summarize why, and for me this was a really bold moment when I saw this and realized what this can achieve. So for me, the fact that you can share data without ever copying and moving, that was amazing. Secondly, the minute you do your ingestion, you do your transformation, normalization, and you have the data available in materialized view or just view on your Snowflake, it's ready to be exposed through the reader account. And the reader user gets the data live. Finally, it's very secure because you are in control of the data. So you can stop sharing at any time. You see and you can monitor what happens to the data. And of course, it's actually low maintenance to create different types of access with dynamic masking and other features which allow you to anonymize the data, apply security controls, and really stop someone from using data if your contractual arrangement is perhaps not fulfilled. So Snowflake from the early days, where the data exchange was really just enablement, yeah? So how do we break down the data silos? And particularly the focus was, can we exchange data better between business units internally? And secondly, can I find an easier mechanisms to share data to my vendors, suppliers, partners, or customers? And I won't go to detail. I'll rather show you, the fact how you use the reader accounts and how you create the listings of different data sets based on your data. Secondly, I think the really important aspect is the governance of the process, and that's where some of the larger companies really felt, or it was too expensive to have a proper governance over it, particularly because you were moving data. So you can manage memberships, you can grant and revoke access through standard personalized listing, you can audit data usage, and you can apply security controls to your data. Now, Snowflake was really working incredibly hard to add more and more features, which everybody, whenever I have discussion on data sharing, people ask, can you do raw access? Can you do dynamic data masking? How easy it is to de-identify data? Can we have tokenization, all those things? And furthermore, how can I prove, how can I have access to the history of what happened to the data? How many times was it accessed? And frankly, it's not just accessing history, but understanding how is your data used, because you can then estimate the cost involved and you can recharge to the third party. So there's really a lot of features built in, which should be plenty enough to have really secure data exchange process. So as promised, I've got 2 use cases for you to demonstrate how a Snowflake can really facilitate data exchange. In the first case, imagine a very large global enterprise. They have interest in different industries, for example, telecommunications or retail or electricity markets and so forth. And within each of the domains, they would have different operating entities across the globe in different markets, whether it's Europe, Asia, and so forth. So in fact, their efforts to today even get data for reporting globally is incredibly difficult. And obviously it's not standardized and so forth. So imagine if you could create different level data exchanges at the individual operating consents level. So for example, within telecommunication domain, you would have the different opcos to actually sharing some traffic or movement of people, which would be de-anonymized, but would certainly give you some idea how people traveled, for example, throughout Europe, because you have roaming, which is free now. So you want to understand what's happening with people changing from one network to another. Yeah, and then so you could aggregate at the industrial level, and from there on, you could, for example, obviously following all the safety standards and the rules and European standards, you could possibly use your traffic data or aggregated data sets to really look at your retail, other industry within your large organization, and see how it helps you to drive traffic, or maybe making some offers specifically to your customers, which would be obviously cross-pollinated across those industries and so forth. Yeah, and the way how you would do it, you would have the internal data exchanges, which would help facilitate the multiple levels of your organization. But once you have all the data at the top level globally for all your industries, you could create some incredibly useful data sets. And this particular company has a special unit which basically constantly comes up with new data products, which then they can expose through the Snowflake data sharing really easily to potential interested parties. So the other example I have here, and I have just diagram of a typical, in this case, I think it's Azure, with Snowflake in the middle, from ETL, ELT perspective, I think we have Databricks and we have some Alteryx and Tableau for more the analytic workflows and preparing curated data sets. Yeah, but I think what I wanted to highlight it here is the fact that it's not just one-way street. In this case, if you look to the left, normally your data sources are existing storage accounts, third parties, external DBs, and so forth. But imagine if one of the sources could be actually external data share, which you receiving from your supplier or from your partner, and you can then add it to your data pipelines, enrich your own data set, and then give it, for example, to your data scientists to do some automated feature engineering and really have better, more precise models, for example. Okay, so what crosses my mind is one particular example from Asia, and I was actually pleased to see Geoff showing the kind of the finance industry. And in most economies, you can actually get a credit score. In Australia, I can just go and ask for my credit score. Now, in some countries in Asia, it's actually incredibly difficult because not everybody's got a bank account and credit card. Yeah. So in this particular case, imagine you are some subprime financial provider, or maybe some neobank, and you're giving loans, let's say for some devices, whether it's a phone or mobile phone and so forth, or whether it's a scooter or something like that, and you need to be able to assess the credit history of the particular applicant. Now, if they don't have credit history, it is incredibly difficult, and it means that you may have a very large call center which needs to make calls to, let's say, family members and others to find out whether it's a trustworthy or credit-worthy applicant. Imagine if you could enter into agreement with, let's say, telco in the same market, who provides mobile plans to the same people, same customers. And they, of course, have their scoring engine, and just which could be simply based on the fact that if this person pays their monthly installments, for 6 months, the credit score is sufficient for you to then give them a loan. So imagine if you through Snowflake could simply cross-pollinate those data sets, de-identify them, so you wouldn't actually see the details of the customers, but the neobank would get for fee a really solid credit score, which would help them to completely eliminate the cost of running huge call centers and so forth. And it will be facilitated through data sharing, secure data sharing, without seeing all the details behind it, and would give extra income to the telco for pay per transaction or whatever the contractual arrangement could be. So I think that there's so much potential, and really it's limitless on different number of use cases. You can look at your organization, how you could benefit from having the data sharing. So now I'd like to jump over to actually give you a demo, because I think we all want to see how it works. So not sure how many people are familiar with the environment. Just quickly, Snowflake, it's a software as a service. So we have databases, we have warehouses, we have obviously the worksheets where you can do the coding and so forth. Yeah, so for people who work with databases, very familiar environment. Now, imagine if I want to look in the marketplace for interesting data sets. I want to understand foot traffic in my retail locations. It could be as simple as going to data marketplace, launch it, and have access directly to the number of those providers which we've mentioned before. And as you can see, we can browse by providers who specialize in this, Axiom and others. You can buy business needs, by different categorizations. Yeah, so it's very easy to use. You can search. If I want, for example, foot traffic, so I can just search for that, and there it is. There is a safe graph foot traffic patterns in US across Starbucks. Okay, so what you see, this is the listing. When I was showing you the listing in the slides, so the provider, data provider, through their Snowflake instance, they publish a listing, and they provide information what's in the data set. Typically, more information you provide, what fields, what samples, tables are included, and so forth. Any additional information, data dictionary. Okay, make it rich, make it easy for people to understand what they're looking at. Usage examples. Typically, you can just simply copy and paste and see what you're getting. And then on the right hand side here is, you typically you need to request data, or some of the samples are free. The one I'm going to look at today is from Starbucks with the same provider, and I've already requested it before the demo just to see how I can get it. So typically it depends on the provider, but it's almost instant to get access to it. So if I now look at my data exchange and I go to data share, you can see I've got inbound and unbound data share. So I'm interested in if the provider I was looking at gave me access to the free data, and it's actually unlimited free access of traffic patterns across Starbucks location. So I can see it here. So it's been enabled to me. And what it means is I should be able to actually go in my list of schemas and tables and views and look at the data which were provided to me. And in fact, there are about 4 tables. So just to demonstrate this, I'm looking at live data which are not sitting in my Snowflake instance. I'm looking at the data which were shared through that cloud setup, the funnel within the Snowflake ecosystem from external provider. And it's live data. You know, I'm not moving the data. I've been told what it looks like. I can now start running the query straight away. So to demonstrate the power of this, let's say I'm happy with it and I just want to, you know, it's obviously a lot of data. I want to visualize it. I've prepared a quick look at the what it might look like, the data which I just received. So we have here data exchange example, Starbucks. So give me a second. So I'm now making a live connection. So I need to add an installer of the data I just received for third-party provider. And the steps are, I requested it, it became enabled in my Snowflake, and I created live connection in Tableau to query the data which sits somewhere else and never left the its origin. Okay, and as you can see, I can, for example, I'm looking at California, so I can look at Arizona, and it's a live connection. I can start, you know, I can look at Scottsdale and I can start meshing up the data I just received with my own data and obviously get a richer experience, better insights. So it's really, really simple, as Geoff said. So let's finish the demo with another example. How do I expose my data to a potential third party? I've prepared really simple data here. Let's say we have some customer data, and just give me a second to find it. I need to go through here. Too much data. So I'll have some customer data which I loaded in. Now, as you can see, already I can apply all those features we've mentioned before. I can use masking of the columns. I can do partial masking. I can do all sorts of things in my preparation of the data. I decided I want to create, I can't share this raw data with potential customers. So in fact, we've created a view which would look at the customer data and only share this particular customer is only interested in segment which is household and the average balance of spend per customer. Okay, so that's the view which we've enabled to our outbound account. So here we have DX customer sample. That's the outbound account which we've created, and we're giving them access to one person, and we're giving them access to just one view. So what that means is that this is the reader account which Geoff mentioned. Yeah, so I'm letting external party coming into my Snowflake instance and only giving them very secure selected access to a particular view which they requested. So how do I log in? Simply click on the address provided. As you can see, it's a different address to mine, but it's just a slice of what we're giving them. And when you come in, even though it's the same place, I can only see one view which has been enabled, and I only see the average balance which was requested and only for one particular segment. So from you as data provider, you're exposing your data to potential third parties. They might be willing to pay for this because that's something they can't get themselves. And it's really, really simple and secure to do so without any additional investment. This feature is free within Snowflake. And of course, the external party, depending how much of data, how much data querying they will be doing, they're consuming your credits, and we'll talk about it later. but you have absolutely control over how much they're spending, and you can obviously recharge and all those things. So to close off, I'd like to show you the final thing, which is if you want to create a listing. Sorry, I need to go back to my own instance. So we saw the marketplace, we saw how you share data, but how do you create the listing? Well, here's how simple it is. The portal Geoff was talking about here is you create on your instance and you decide what data, what description, what listings do you publish. So this is obviously my publishing, it's a test of customer list with particular selection and filtering, that data is anonymized. How many queries, is it free, manage the listing, and so forth. Yeah. So imagine, even without going externally to the marketplace, imagine if you could take all the interesting curated data sets which are scattered around your organization across different departments, and you could put them internally into one place, and people would, with simple SQL skills and being able to use the view as the share as a source for their Tableau reports, all those analysts would have immediate access to all the data across the organization. Of course, you can control who has access or not. Okay, so even within an organization, you may give, it could be sensitive data, so you may anonymize. In fact, and that's probably for another webinar, Snowflake can straight away mask data, unmask as needed. Yeah, so we quite often, when we do implementation, we are asked straight away when we ingest data into Snowflake, mask PII straight away, and then unmask as needed. So with this, I will finish my my demo, and I think in closing, I'd like for you to take away a few points from what we've seen today. With Snowflake, it's not just data warehouse, it's really end-to-end data cloud functionality. You can definitely reduce the manual effort and the obstacles existing today for sharing data across parties. Secondly, it allows multiple companies or divisions to do a joint analysis under defined guidelines and restrictions that keep the data secure. We're not sending data sets in files, emails, and so forth. You can securely match data without cross-revealing PII. So, we can have, obviously, the matching columns can be hidden. Still, you can query across, which is incredible. And you can accelerate use cases and analytical insights while maintaining compliance. I think that's really important, because from data governance perspective, you really need to understand who has access to what and how the data sets are being used. And I think including restricting the re-identification. So you really don't need to expose data for analysts to join data sets. So finally, Snowflake Data Cloud allows you to securely share live, ready to query data without copying or moving them. So with that, I would like to ask my colleague Philip to see if there are any questions in the chat. I certainly noticed there were some initially, and start going through it, and depends on the nature of the question, either myself or Geoff would answer them. Over to you, Philip.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both of you, Michael and Geoff. I gotta say that the presentation so far has been incredible. I've certainly learned a lot myself. Now, as mentioned, I'm gonna go through the questions and see what all we have here. So let me start. We actually have quite a few. Let me start with the more generic ones. So what makes Snowflake different from any other data warehouse, data lake, or database? Which one of you would like to take this one?
I'll give it a shot. I think one of the things is really the fact that we're a SaaS service, and the second is we're a consumption. So number one, being a SaaS service, incredibly quick to get started. Anyone can literally go to our website and be up and running in 30 minutes. Once you're up and running, I think the very unique thing about Snowflake is it's a great example of a consumption solution. There is no fixed monthly fee. You simply pay for how you use it. So I think that's the second big difference. SaaS service, consumption. And I think the third thing is rather than buying and trying to integrate 5 or 6 different best of breed tools to get you a capability to do data engineering, to have a layer where you can be a data lake, to actually have that data warehouse capability. And as we spoke about for the last 50 minutes, the ability to data share, all of this is baked into a single unified platform. So it's really, really quick for our customers to realize value from the platform in a very short period of time.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Geoff. I believe I might have a follow-up question. It's actually from Pete. And Pete asks, how much does Snowflake cost? And is there a way to manage the costs? And also if the data sharing feature is for free.
Okay, so with Snowflake, we don't have a really complex pricing mechanism. Everything comes as part of the solution. So the cost is super simple. We charge $25 per terabyte per month. And I almost laughed because earlier in my career, I remember paying $30,000 a terabyte for some solutions. So how things have changed in 5 years. Snowflake, $25 per terabyte per month. And we charge for the compute on the basis of a compute credit. Depending on the edition of Snowflake you pick, somewhere between $3 and $5. So incredibly cost effective. And is the data sharing for free? No, it's not, but it simply just consumes compute credits as you use the functionality.
And if I can add to your answer, Geoff, absolutely, the functionality is free. You don't have to build it, but then it's the consumption. And I think, you know, for me, the light bulb moment was, you know, if you typical Teradata implementation, 2 issues. You're storing data multiple times, so you have very expensive instance, very expensive machine where you're storing raw data and you're not getting your money back. Yeah. So and you're constantly running out of space, and you prepaying the capacity. As Geoff said, with Snowflake, 2 things: you never copy data. You have data only once, and you pay essentially the cloud storage cost. Yeah. And then you can have as many virtual warehouses as you like, running different patterns, loading, ad hoc querying, you know, modeling, and so forth. And you can choose the size. As I said, you want to have it quick, and it's important, business critical. Pay for larger instance, you know, extra large or triple extra large, getting done in 5 seconds. But trust me, even with extra small instance, you get very high performance. You'll be surprised. So it's actually not costing as much. And the minute you finish, you know, obviously with some delay, I think it's 2 minutes or then it's 5 minutes, you stop paying. And even better, imagine you have 1,000 Tableau users. The first user runs the query, refreshes the data, Snowflake caches it, and the remaining 999 people can run the same report, which was pre-cached, and it's going to be faster, and you're not paying for it. So there's so many features built in. It's almost too good to be true, frankly, when I first, you know, started working with Snowflake about 4 or 5 years ago. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you very much, both gentlemen. Let's follow up. So can I try data sharing if we don't yet have Snowflake in our company? Asks Mark. Okay,
let me pick this one. So you don't need Snowflake. Obviously, you can, as Geoff said, it's really easy to start a trial, but typically you need to enable the data sharing capability. The best way to do this is that we could assist you with our partner instance, create very simple prototype where you would give us your sample data, and we would create the reader account for you, and you would be able to test it and blend it with your other data, even load your own data to the reader account, and then use your reporting tool, whether it's Tableau, Power BI, and so forth, over it to really see how simple that is. So we could certainly assist you with it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next one. Does the single tenancy / RBAC model discussed present any security risks, perceived or otherwise?
Geoff, go ahead. You can probably spend 5 minutes listing all the certifications you guys have.
Look, I think at the end of the day, the largest financial institutions in the world are using Snowflake. Around about half a dozen to a dozen MAS regulated institutions are using Snowflake. Public sector is using Snowflake. Many of the world's largest telcos, largest healthcare providers. So we're storing PI data, we're storing confidential data, we're storing healthcare data in Snowflake. So to date, out of our 5,000 customers, we have yet to actually ever lose a customer for not being able to demonstrate the appropriate level of security controls.
And for those in Australia, our client CBA uses Snowflake. Yeah, so certainly 2 years ago will be a different situation, but I think that the appetite for Snowflake in large banking institutions, which are notoriously known for the scrutiny, we went through that barrier already. It's been certified, it's been proven. So I would say it's very safe.
Again, thank you, Geoff and Michael. Now, Phil asks, what is required from admin and maintenance perspective to run Snowflake?
Let me answer that. Simply, as I said, you don't need DBA. Okay. The optimization engine within, which really shows you how it optimizes querying, the fact that you can really separate the different demands on your data warehouse without cloning data. The fact, for me, the biggest example of savings is, imagine typical scenario with a large data warehouse on Teradata or Exadata or on-premise typical data warehouse. You're going live with the new data pipelines, or you have a new release. You ask for copy. You have dev test, pre-production, production. You ask for 3 months worth of data in your pre-production system. You have to wait. Typically it's weeks before, and they need to make up space. It's just incredibly difficult and slows down your implementation efforts. Within Snowflake, with zero clone copy, you can take the copy of your production data and it's there straight away. You don't have to make up space, and you can run your new processes, new transformation against the zero clone copy of the data, and really use as many as you like. So the saving in time and the effort just to prep something that simple is groundbreaking. So there's a lot of the overhead with managing infrastructure. You can forget it. You really just need the architects. You need a good data model. You of course need to get data to the cloud, and you have to have good engineers for ingestion and so forth. But trust me, it's the least of your worries to actually look after the database. So that is for me the biggest benefit. We are, as Billigence, we are all about value to the market. So how can we do quick insights? And for us, that's why we're behind this technology as partners, because it helps us to reduce the time required to give new insights to the business users.
Thank you, Michael. And speaking of insights, Tony asks, how does Snowflake integrate with the ecosystem of tools? Think BI or data science, etc. Thank you.
Very, very long list. So look, we typically use Matillion, Talent, Databricks, and ADF. You can use any kind of ETL tools. Of course, Tableau, Power BI, Click, all those things are incredible. All that is out of box. You just download the connector. Now, I would warn one thing. You really need to make sure the best way to use Snowflake is to push down on Snowflake, to leverage the power of Snowflake. So create a logic in your ELT, ETL tool and transformation, engines, but then push down on Snowflake, get the performance, leverage the scalability of Snowflake, and get the result back. So that's the best way to do it. But I would certainly not worry about not having a connector for your tools.
Thank you, Geoff. Do you want to have a go at this one as well?
No, exactly as Michael said. I mean, it's very, very seamless to connect to Snowflake. We support all the popular ingestion tools, virtually all the popular AI ML tools, as well as all the key visualization tools. And failing that, there's always JDBC and ODBC. So very easy to connect to Snowflake.
And Geoff, we forgot to mention Python, integration with Python, which is obviously very important to all our data science friends. So that's built in now as well.
So we just announced yesterday that we have invested in Anaconda, and we look forward to enabling, their tens of thousands of users to program using Python against Snowflake.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, both. Another question. Can you help me understand? And this is something that I believe, Michael, you partially already covered, throughout the demonstration and the presentation before. Can you help me understand why is it beneficial for companies to do data sharing? Does sharing data benefit the sharee or the sharer? Is it possible to share some success stories? Asks Daniel.
So look, I believe there's two primary benefits. One, if you in an industry where you have a lot of partners or suppliers and you're constantly dealing with many different parties who send you data, you can really standardize the process and make it really simple. And in fact, you can enrich the data and through data sharing, give it back to those suppliers. And there are situations, if you look at Quantium, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Quantium. Quantium is actually a very big user of Snowflake, and they have some retail and supplier data sets which they enrich and actually provide services back to those third parties, and they sell them as data products. So twofold: automation, simplification of the data exchange, the security that you know what's happening to data, you still control it. But secondly, enormous potential for data monetization, actually get some revenue. And frankly, every CFO I talk to loves the concept. If you tell them that you can actually start generating additional revenue by data sharing, they would love you for it, and you will get total sponsorship support. So it's a nice angle to actually get even involved with Snowflake. Definitely recommend it. Happy to talk more about it.
Amazing. Thank you again. And we actually have the last few questions remaining. And I do apologize to the audience a little bit. I know we're running late, but I'm pretty sure the same way as it is interesting for me, it is interesting for you as well. Let's get to it. The marketplace capability looks like it has the potential to provide a data catalog capability. Does this also include metadata management capabilities / is Snowflake positioned as a data governance solution?
So no, it's not. So basically, while we have a metadata layer built into Snowflake, if you're looking at enterprise data catalog, this layer can then connect into a popular tool such as, Elation, Calibra, Informatica. So we're absolutely not positioning Snowflake as a data governance tool. We're positioning Snowflake as a really easy mechanism to access data sets that have been curated.
Exactly, Geoff. And look, we do a lot of data governance. We scan constantly Snowflake instances. We get all the schemas in a data dictionary into our Calibra instances or Alteryx Connect or Elation. And what you get is a really good catalog of the shares where you at least have a curated way of exposing data assets to different departments, different users, so it's easy for them to find it. So in that aspect, it's a catalog, but it's got built-in governance features, how to securely do it, but it's not your data governance tool. Okay.
Thank you. Awesome. And we've got Mark here, and Mark is actually interested in knowing how long does a typical Snowflake implementation take, recognizing that all organizations are obviously of a different size. And also, he refers back to what you mentioned, Michael, which is that CBA uses Snowflake. He asks who are the other biggest users of Snowflake in Australia, plus also who he should ideally, have a private conversation in regards to using Snowflake in his organization, who he shall reach out to.
So I think we are partner. We've implemented, we offloaded Teradata into cloud, into Snowflake. So we have different scenarios. So we certainly would love to talk to you. I guess here in front of you, you see our contact. Please reach out or directly reach out to us in Sydney or Singapore. I think the answer for the largest user, I would leave to you, Geoff. Would you like to comment on this?
Look, we have many references that we can share, so please reach out to Michael. We'll share our references. But yeah, we literally have hundreds of customers in Australia that Michael will be more than happy to share when you reach out to him.
Yeah, and I think the first part of the question was, what does it take? To give you an example, we typically, and Geoff said, if you want just to start, and do a trial, you are up and running in 30 minutes, and you can ingest, you can upload your data from your storage account or directly, and you're up and running. We typically, in an organization, when we're really talking about two standard use cases, which is offloading data warehouse to the cloud, or have some specific, turbocharge, what I call turbocharging or supercharging your Hadoop implementation with really high performing data mart over top of it. Just really depends, yeah? So we typically have really functioning pilot within 2 to 4 weeks. When we ingest data, we typically repoint your existing reports. We create simple model or just curated view, which services Tableau, which you already have, and so forth. And we can demonstrate the value really, really quickly. Typical implementation, again, Geoff would have the, there's always the scale. So if you're completely offloading very large Teradata instance with, 3 layers and 1,000 jobs and 1,000 tables, I think the fastest one was in 100 days. But look, we would say, 3 to 6 months, depending, really, there's a lot of complexities. How many transformation ingestion jobs do you have? How many sources do you have? How complex is your data model, and so forth. So more than happy to discuss with you your scenario and give you really more specific answers, which we can't answer today because there's just too many variables. But we're not talking, it's fast. And that's one of the reasons why we really love this technology, because we can do things faster, that's for sure. So I think, Philip, we ran out of questions and ran out of time. So in closing, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it, all questions. Geoff, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to have you. And look, if you are looking to move to your data warehouse on-premise to cloud, absolutely. If you'd like to try data sharing in real life scenario, happy to assist you. Happy to answer any questions. Please contact us. We are here to help. It's been great to be here today. Thanks you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, both of you, and thank you very much, dear audience. Have a good one, everyone. Goodbye. Thank you.